move on. Thank you for joining me in that. So this evening, I just hit the wrong button on my notes, I apologize. This evening's agenda, we are going to look back at 2020 and do a review of what happened in Erie last year. And then we will move on to this year, 2021, what's already happening and what we can look forward to. But before we do that, we have a quick word from our town administrator. Oop, I can't hear Malcolm.
Voice and your ideas on the comprehensive plan, home rule charter, sustainability, diversity, equity, and inclusion, housing affordability, and many other issues. We want to hear from you and work with you to make the town of Erie the best it can be.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. And so, you know, he is joining us this evening and will be on. So at the end, when we do Q&A, I will be here to answer questions, of course, as well as our town administrator, Malcolm Fleming. And as we're going along, if you guys think of questions you would like answered, whether it pertains to the applicable slide we're on or not, if you go down to the Q&A button on the lower right of the webinar control panel, you can click that and you can submit a question either anonymously or with your name attached, and then we will address those at the end of the presentation. So please use that at any time to type in questions you would like answered. So let's go on to the next slide. So first we'll start with 2020. So I'd like starting with finances. Even with the challenges that COVID presented us last year, we made some cuts and we made changes to our initially approved budget for 2020 to ensure that we were responsibly managing taxpayer dollars and that we would end the year as close to a surplus as possible. That was our goal. And we met it, and not only met it, we exceeded it. So we ended 2020 with a general fund balance of over $3 million surplus, and with the balance of over $22 million. So as you look at this graph, looking back to 2016 to the present, every year our general fund balance has been steadily growing, and we have been providing a surplus to our residents. And this really just puts us in a place in the future where if COVID had, for example, a really negative impact on our town's financials, we would have money in this fund to be able to deal with those financial implications. Luckily, we didn't have to do that in 2020, but this shows our residents and our staff and our board that we have the ability to weather challenging situations and also just build a brighter future for Erie. Let's go on to the next slide. So we talked about COVID. COVID impacted our residents and our community. You guys are all well aware. Everyone has been impacted in different ways. And honestly, as a board and staff, we didn't know how it was going to impact our community. And I think a lot of us had worse ideas of how things would end up in Erie than they actually did. We were really quick to implement resident relief programs to help with utility bills for residents in need and experiencing financial hardship due to COVID. We were able to provide $300,000 to 44 businesses to help with some of the initial closures and impacts of COVID and what that did to reduce capacity and businesses being closed and stay-at-home orders, et cetera. And I believe we're the first municipality to get a program together and start getting money out to businesses. And then we worked on easing regulations and working with our businesses, especially throughout the summer, how we let them expand into Briggs Street so they could have table services that were spaced out, outside, but still be able to serve patrons and make money for their business. So I was really proud that we were able to work with businesses to come up with ideas that were safe for the people visiting, safe for the employees, supported the businesses, and also supported public health. So we can go on to the next slide. Economic growth. Despite the challenges that COVID presented us last year, we had economic growth to be celebrated. At least 8 new businesses opened their doors during 2020. The town's ice skating rink opened in downtown Erie, and an airport economic development advisory board was formed to promote and expedite economic development activity at our airport. And these are 3 really big areas that are going to help our town grow and be successful in the future. You'll see on the left here, we were able to work with, county, state, and federal governments to distribute over $1 million in COVID relief funds. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. In 2020, we saw the boards and the community's continued focus on the expansion and investment of parks and open space. In October, we opened the Coal Creek Disc Golf Course, which is an 18-hole course. It's just east of Old Town and north of Erie Parkway. Every time I drive by, the parking lot is full and there are people outside playing. Whether it's cold or warm, it's an awesome amenity that we added to our community and one that I think our residents are really enjoying and celebrating. Clayton Park opened in November of last year, and then we broke ground on the final phase of Erie Community Park, which is a 12-acre expansion just across from the library. So we can go on to the next slide. The town formalized its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, paving the way for a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. Some of the ways we did this, all of the Board of Trustees and town staff joined our community with over 1,000 people in a march late spring in response to George Floyd's death, which was called the Being Better Neighbors March. After that, we launched a police directives task force, and we have 7 to 10, I can't remember the exact number, community members that have joined us and are working alongside members of our police department to review all of our department policies and procedures and help make changes along the way to be more equitable. And I know they've already been making changes, and once they're done with their work, they're going to give a presentation to the community on all of the work that's been completed. We also established a 7-member advisory board, which is called our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Board. So this will be a full-time ongoing board alongside all of our other advisory boards. And the intent of that is to advise the board and represent diversity, including racial, ethnic, LGBTQ, economic backgrounds, and disabilities, among others. And then community conversations. We started this series last year. We hosted a talk on how to be inclusive, as well as we had an initial discussion with the community on George Floyd's death and how people were feeling and what that meant moving forward. So we can go on to the next slide. So finally, when looking back at 2020, we not only focused on the short-term items that were in front of us and pressing in that moment, but we kept our focus on long-term planning. And a couple of the items that I want to highlight, intersection improvements. So 287 in Arapahoe and 287 in Isabelle / Erie Parkway, depending on what side of the highway you're on. Those improvements, finalized design plans. I think ground moving, dirt moving started end of last year, beginning of this year. We also approved the design for 2 roundabouts as a part of town center, and those are at the intersections of Erie Parkway and County Line Road, just north and south of there. We had a massive update to our oil and gas code. So we now have over 60 pages of regulations on oil and gas development and how it can be done, how it's regulated moving forward. And one key area in that piece that we adopted is it is prohibited in residential areas. And our last is we restructured our water rates. We performed a study and we restructured our rates, which for a majority of residents showed a slight decrease in their average bill. So we'll go on to the next slide. So now let's look at 2021, where we're at now and what we have planned for the rest of this year. So starting again with finances, we're projecting ending surplus of over $1 million with an ending general fund balance of 28 million, just over 28 million, which again keeps us on our upward trajectory for general fund balance. Let's go to the next slide. So in 2019, we engaged the community in a design process for town center, which includes the properties surrounding the intersection of Erie Parkway and County Line Road. And what I wanted to highlight here is really give you an update of where things are at. There's a lot of behind the scenes work going on right now and exciting projects that are coming, but I don't think these are things that are out there in the public view and public consumption space often. So we already talked about those, the roundabouts that the board approved. Those are the Peel intersections. So the areas, and actually I should orient you. So the center of this map going east-west is Erie Parkway. And then it curves, yeah, thank you. The Erie Parkway goes east-west and then it curves up. And then going north-south, kind of on the left third, is County Line Road. So that'll kind of give you, and where that blue dot is right now, go back, is the community center. So that'll give you some point of reference. So the items highlighted in red are those Peel intersections. They're called the Peel because the road peels off to the west of County Line Road, curving into those two western pieces of town center. Those are the two locations of the roundabouts that we approved. And the north roundabout is targeted to start construction at the end of this year. And the south one, I believe, will start construction next year. Branchwood Residential, they're the northwest corner, circled in green. Thank you. They have residential site plans submitted and they plan on breaking ground fall of this year. And we have started preliminary discussions on the commercial plans and how to activate the southern portion of that site. COVID has delayed those discussions, but we are still actively having them and we have some different options we're pursuing. Four Corners is the southwestern parcel of land here. They anticipate submitting residential plans this summer and starting construction next spring. So they have pre-application in now to the town and their site plan submittal is expected later this year. And finally, Erie Commons. This is the area circled in orange. You're gonna see this will be kind of the first area you see movement in of all four of these. So Boulder Creek Wheat Cottages, they're about 800 square feet to 1,000 square feet, tiny homes. And I say tiny homes, but they're not mobile tiny homes. They're tiny homes that are meant to be permanent and they stay there. That's an exciting new product that they're offering. And it's really exciting to have a new diverse housing type in Erie. And so we expect them to start construction this fall. They have a couple small details they're working through now, but they're ready to break ground. So we're really excited there. And then last, along Erie Parkway there's several commercial pad sites. And the first of those that we anticipate breaking ground and opening is a Circle K, and they anticipate breaking ground this fall. So a lot of exciting movement at Town Center. And I know as someone who participated in that process and seeing hundreds of you at those different events, it's really exciting to see our plans actually start moving. And I know you guys will be even more excited when buildings start going up. So let's go to the next slide. 9 Mile. So 9 Mile project is at 287 in Arapahoe. It's moving forward and we are excited about this cornerstone entrance into our community. The apartments, which are on the eastern portion of the property, not facing 287, those are expected to open early 2022. Lowe's, the anchor tenant on this site for our commercial offerings, is expected to open fall of this year. If you drive out to this side of town, you know that construction is underway. Roads have been rerouted and are closed off. I think the timing, coincidentally with COVID and these road improvements, worked out for residents that are able to stay home. So there's less people on the roads. And last, talking about roads, that intersection 287 in Arapahoe, it's not great. Pre-COVID, I'm talking about, when people are trying to commute that way, there's long wait times, not many cars get through red lights. So in addition to this project, adding people and volume to this intersection, we knew that we needed to improve this intersection regardless. So There is a large intersection improvement happening right now at 287 and Arapahoe. Going east-west on Arapahoe, we're going to get 2 straight lanes to get more people through every green light in the morning when you're trying to commute into Lafayette, Boulder, west of here. They're adding turn lanes, and we're adding enhanced crosswalk features as well. So that is underway and expected to be completed this year in the fall. So we can go on to the next slide. So continuing talking about transportation, we have talked about the importance of being on top of road improvements and keeping our residents' commute times as easy as possible. 287 and Isabelle, if you're on the west side, Erie Parkway on the east, this is another intersection we've seen get bogged down in the recent years. And there's a lot of people going to Boulder, and that intersection just can't handle it. So for the past, I think about 3 years, we've been working with Boulder County on intersection design and plans. And we finally broke ground there, I believe, late last year, early this year. And this intersection is expected to be complete this summer. And so there will only be 1 straight lane here if you're going east-west, but there will be 2 turn lanes if you're coming from Erie to get onto 287. There'll be dedicated turn lane to go north. And then if you're coming from Boulder into Erie, you'll have a dedicated lane, whether you're going north on 287 or south or coming east into Erie. So I'm really excited as well for this intersection to help improve commute times of people coming and going on our western borders. So let's go to the next slide. Awesome. So our commitment to parks and open space continues with 2 key projects this year. We talked about the groundbreaking of this final phase of Erie Community Park. This final community park phase is set to open this winter. This picture on the top right, to give you reference, the library is the building on the bottom left, and then the ball fields are kind of at the top in the center. It's hard to tell with the brown grass there, but that's an aerial shot. There's going to be an outdoor pump track, I think is the right terminology. There's going to be yoga areas, picnic areas, sledding hills, basketball courts. There's a lot of awesome amenities, and this is really going to round out all of our Erie Community Park offerings, and I think be so much more for our residents that want to be in the central area. And then last, Coal Creek Park is in Old Town. It's on the east side of Old Town. And this project, we're expecting to break ground late this year. And this design has been in work for a couple of years. And some of the key features here, you'll see it's more flexible. So some of our parks are designed to be for specific uses or sports, etc. But we wanted this to be more flexible, both from a programming aspect for sports for kids, but also for community programming. The chamber hosts a lot of concerts in the park. They have Brewfest, they have the Wine and Cheese Festival. They have so many different events. We have the Fall Festival, Miners Fest, right? We need spaces that we can program for all these different type of events. So you'll see 2 large green areas on this plan, and that'll give us the flexibility to continue the type of programming that the town and chamber have been doing in the past, and then also give us the flexibility for community members to use it for personal uses or to program for parks and rec and sports. And one unique feature about this is our ice skating rink, temporarily is located on the lot east of the post office, but this, Amber or Gabby, can you circle the middle smaller green area toward the bottom? Go to your right a little bit. Oh yeah, sorry, the one next to the parking lot. So that green space in the winter, it's going to be built to support the ice skating rink. So we're going to be able to have that amenity on this park in a couple years once this is completed. So it'll be nice to have a permanent space for it. It's flexible. There'll be space for a ticketing office, etc. So it's really great for the community to look forward to this and also help bring more people into Old Town to support our businesses. We hope they're going to come and use this park and the different events that happen here and then come and stay in downtown Erie and support our businesses. Go to the next slide. We're continuing to grow our focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion to be a part of Erie in everything we do. We have approved the position for a DE&I director, and we are starting recruitment any day now, and we anticipate hiring for this position in late spring. we are continuing our speaker series. We talked about the community conversations events we had last year. We had an amazing series that Erie resident Alicia Graves put together. She came up with the idea, put it together, brought it to the town and the school districts, and made this series happen. And the series was called Talking to Children About Race. And it was a fantastic series. I attended all of the events. There's a little bit of information that's consistent on each event, and that's just education, explaining some of the history and backstory. But then I would say at least half of each of those is very unique to the specific age groups on how you talk to the children in those age groups and tools you can have as a parent in having those conversations. And if you miss out on that series, we have them recorded and they're online. Amber or Gabby, is there a chat or a way we could put the website in there if people want to grab it? I believe it's erieco.gov/community conversations. So please, if you miss those, check it out. It was an amazing series and we had hundreds of people attending those events. So let's go on to our next slide. So shifting the focus now to longer term projects, we have 3 that are a focus for 2021. So I'm going to start with the comprehensive plan first. I know it's in the middle. The comprehensive plan is, I think, what for a resident, when you think of what's Erie going to become, you could look at the comprehensive plan, look at a map and see general uses and how we expect Erie to grow out and develop once it's at its full build out. And so for this, we really want to make sure that we have resident engagement because this is your plan. It's your community. It's our community, our plan. So we're going to have extensive community engagement and outreach to talk to you about what do you want the rest of Erie to look like as we grow and build out. And that comprehensive plan, the map for it sets the vision and the goal for our town. And then how we implement the comprehensive plan is through our unified development code. So that's where a lot of the specific details go into what you can build where and what it looks like and how, et cetera. And so once we complete the comprehensive plan updates, we're going to dive deeper into the unified development code and make sure that our code is reflective and supportive of the vision that our community has and where we want to go. And then last, home rule. So a lot of people may say, what is home rule? And it's a form of government right now. We're a statutory town. Mayor Pro Tem Hayde, I think, coined the example of that's like a town with training wheels. It's meant for new towns and municipalities to just get their bearings. And then once you're ready to lose the training wheels and just ride your bike on your own and have more control, you go home rule. And the state provides more autonomy for municipalities that are home rule. So this is something that the town boards have been talking about for several years. We think there's value in going home rule in the next couple of years, but it's a really big undertaking and we need our community to be educated about what that means. And we want to make sure that you agree with us and that you think this is where we should be going. So there's going to be a lot of education starting in the next couple of weeks, month or two, and that'll be going throughout summer. And then depending on the engagement from our public and outreach, we will either pursue this path now or we may wait another couple of years. But this is something that we're going to kick off and start exploring with all of you further. So let's go on. And to better support our residents as our town continues to grow, I wanted to highlight 3 strategic hires. So first, I already mentioned that we want to hire and plan on hiring a diversity, equity, and inclusion director. We need someone to have this area as their focus for their full-time job, both to help us inwardly as a town with our policies and our procedures and how we operate inwardly, but we want as a board this person to help outwardly. How is the chamber? How is the EEDC? How can we all be better in this area for Erie and to support our residents? Energy and environment specialist. If you are tuned in to oil and gas, you may have heard LGD, local government designee. That's a term coined by the COGCC, the state regulatory body, for somebody in a local government that is responsible for oil and gas activity. And we want somebody that focuses on oil and gas as their primary job as well. There are a lot of notifications and events happening around town that we need to communicate with our residents. There's potential drilling sites in Will County that will impact our residents. And there's existing sites that are going to go through maintenance operations and end of life operations, et cetera, as we move forward. There's a lot going on, and it's too much for our individual staff members to do bits and pieces of. So we're hiring one person to focus exclusively on oil and gas related items and to be more of a focal point for our community. We think that's really going to streamline questions and concerns and education around oil and gas in our policy in our community. And then last, our deputy town administrator. We had one last year and she moved on to a non-governmental role. And so we are actively recruiting right now for her replacement. And we anticipate by April to have a person identified and an offer out. So we'll be able to get some more help back into our senior leadership at Town Hall. So let's go on to the next slide. So all of these things we're trying to do and accomplish would not be successful or as successful without really strong and good communications. So we now have two people, two awesome ladies in our communications department. Before we had one. It's a huge undertaking. It's a big job. And this board wants so much community outreach and engagement on the topics that are important to our community and the big projects that we're doing. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of those areas on how we are continuing to focus on communication with residents and then how we're looking at improving moving forward. So surveys, every other year we do a community survey. So that'll be going out to residents in spring. So I think April, May timeframe, it will be showing up in your mailboxes. We also have an online version, so that if you didn't get the mailed version, because I think it only goes out to about 1,500 residents, you can participate. And then the new tools that our company offers has these one-off surveys. So we can do small surveys and ping the community on this survey website. Instead of having to do a really large survey every 2 years. So I'm really excited that we'll be able to have that as another tool. And then we have this Engage Erie site. I believe it's erieengage.us. I should have had that one written down. Gabby or Amber, if you could pop it in the chat. We've used that for some parks and rec projects right now and updates, for example, to the final phase of Erie Community Park. They're posting videos and pictures on there. So that's another way that we can ask questions or engage with our community. So this year, we're going to perform a comprehensive audit of all of our town communications, both internal and external. Oh, thank you. It's erieco.us. My web link was not right. So the Engage Erie site that we're using for just casual topics to gauge your interest on was erieco.us. So our audit is going to look at our website, our email listservs, the text alerts, engagement platforms, utility bill inserts, local newspaper announcements, and more. How are we doing at utilizing our tools that we have now? And then what are the areas we can grow in moving forward? And then engagement plans. This is something that I believe our town administrator brought to the town when he was hired a couple years ago. So for the work plan that the board adopts, which drives the goals that the staff is going to work towards in a given year above and beyond their standard job, those additional items, he had us establish a level of engagement that we want for each item. And so for each big project, whether it's a comprehensive plan update or doing the community conversation series, we have community engagement plans for how we're going to engage the community and what level of engagement we want as well. So that's something newer to the town in the last couple of years and really helps us target our engagement based on the item that we're looking at. So let's go to the next slide. So I will turn it over to questions now. Let me see. Before we do questions, I'll let Gabby maybe gather them together. I want to thank all of our town staff for everything that they are doing. 2020 has been an incredibly challenging year for everyone, and I think our town staff have really adapted to all of the changes because of COVID and been able to provide really high quality, great level of service, whether it's remote or on the phone or a web meeting, when a lot of them are used to that in-person interaction. So I'm really appreciative to all of our town staff for not only just making do, but and surviving, but I think we really thrived as a town. And I think looking back at 2020, it really shows what we're all able to accomplish when everyone is working well together, and everyone's really awesome. Just to just to put it frankly, we have awesome town staff, awesome community members. So I'm really grateful for everyone. Chamber is included in there as well. We are a very lucky community, and I'm very lucky to serve in this role, and to work with all of you. So Gabby, yeah, I don't know.
Yes, I have some questions for you. And just a reminder to everybody on the call, if you want to look at the bottom of your screen, there is a little Q&A button. You can use that to ask any questions that you might have. My name is Gabby. I'm the communications director, and I'll read off some of the things we have. So Mayor, the first question I have for you, you have mentioned before from the 2019 community survey that it supported the Board of Trustees' decision to move forward towards home rule. At the time, 41% of those surveys didn't respond to that specific question. And a small number were in favor of those who did. Can you let us know then why you're going to move forward on the home rule question?
Right. So I will start. I don't think I mentioned the survey, but we did ask about this in the past, and we don't know. So there are, personally, I'm one of the people in the middle. I think at some point we need it. Do we need it today? Probably not. Do we need it in 5 years? Probably yes. I'm in the middle. But we act as a board. We act as 7 of us. And there are a lot of people that feel strongly that this will be better for Erie financially. This will give us more ability to control what happens in Erie and not be tied to what the state is telling us we have to do or how we have to run our town. There are certain ways for taxation, licensing, regulations. There's some autonomy that you can get from going home rule that you just can't have as a statutory town. So I think the reason why I said we're starting with education and community engagement is because we don't know if people answered, no, I don't want to go home rule because they don't know what it is, or if they answered no because they know what it is and they don't want it. We don't know. And so I think because there's interest from the board who have talked to community members who have expressed interest, we decided, let's start with education. Let's tell people what is home rule, what are the pros, what are the cons. Let's get you educated if you don't know what it is. And then once you have that information, we're going to pull you, we're going to engage with you. We're going to say, now that you know, what do you think about it? And if there's an overwhelming group of our residents that say, yeah, we learn the benefits, the pros and cons, but we don't want it, I will 100% stand behind you. And I think the board is going to stand behind you. But we want to start that process, see if it's something our community wants to explore. And if it's not, it'll be tabled. This is not something that I see this board forcing on the community if it's not wanted, but it's something that we want to educate the community on, and further learn their views.
Thank you for that. Next, I have a question about development. So can you give me an update on what's happening, or if anything's happening, at the I-25 Gateway?
That is a great question. So we are still looking. We actually have a couple of different potential developers, I will say, interested in parts or all of the land that we own. And there is a developer that owns the land north of us that is interested in moving forward in developing his land in the next 5-ish years. And I say ish because there's other things that need to happen and develop to the west of that property before it makes sense for the I-25 property to develop. So I'll say it's not a short-term project. The amount of work it will take to get the infrastructure, the water, the sewer, the electricity to that site is really expensive, and it's going to take some time. So it's something that is taking thoughtful planning. We completed a master plan out there a couple of years ago. So we have a high-level plan and a vision for what we want to see out there. And so now we're just laying the groundwork. We're getting development that's close by that'll help us get infrastructure close by that we can tie into. We're talking to developers out there about what do they want to do? Is it in line with what we have envisioned or not? And then once we find someone that is interested in doing what we want, we'll start getting more concrete plans put together and engage the community at that time. So that one, it's on our radar, but it is a longer term project.
Thank you. All right, we have another question about roads and infrastructure. Is Erie involved in the decisions for Highway 7 and any changes or expansions? Is there any discussion to continue what has been done there in the last year?
That's a great question. And I see that's from Brad. Brad, for the second part, while I'm answering your first, if you could just clarify what you mean by continuing what's been done in the last year so I can make sure I address that. I will say, Erie, we do not have control per se, like real physical, maybe not physical is the right word, right? But financial and real control over that road. That's a CDOT road. But we can be an influencer. And I serve on, it used to be called the US 36 Mayors and Commissioners Coalition, and they just renamed themselves to Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition. That group is mayors and commissioners from Boulder County, Louisville, Lafayette, Longmont, Broomfield, Erie, and we all get together to talk about regional transportation issues that affect all of us. And sometimes a project only affects one or two of us, and then other times it affects all of us, but we come together so that we can have a louder voice and all support each other for these projects that in our region are really important. And one of those projects right now that all of those municipalities collectively are advocating for to our state legislators and our federal legislators is Highway 7 improvements, including both expanded lane capacities and bus rapid transit. And I actually spent last week, we had virtual flyouts with all the mayors from this area that I just listed, having calls with all of our federal officials as they're looking at transportation funding and bills to say, here are our needs in our community and here's our priorities, and we would like you to allocate funding to help us with these. And Highway 7 was one of the three. One of the other ones was 287 and then 119. 119 between Longmont Boulder doesn't impact us, but the other two projects do. So we definitely have a regional voice in advocating for our needs, but we ultimately don't make that final decision on what happens on Highway 7.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yes.
And I do actually have a follow-up that came in on a home rule question. And if you have this information, what was the last town in Colorado that was transitioned to home rule, and was it beneficial? And is Erie the largest town by population in Colorado without home rule?
I see Malcolm says he's going to answer it. So Malcolm, I'll let you take a step first. And if I have anything to add, I will jump in.
Thanks, Mayor Carroll. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I did pull up the statistics. Erie is by far the largest statutory town. Currently, we think we're getting pretty close to 30,000 people. The next closest statutory town would be Superior and Firestone. I don't have their current population estimates. I'm guessing that Superior is about 15,000, maybe a little bit less, and Firestone's probably in that same range as well. The last home rule statutory town to go home rule was Castle Pines and Eagle, I think were the last two, and they both did that in the last 2 years. Eagle just recently, I think last year, their election was successful, and I believe they both think it was a very positive experience.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming. And I don't have anything else to add on to that.
All right, perfect. Let me ask you, someone is wanting an update on our status for getting our money recouped after we had the issue with the bridge a couple of years ago in 2019.
Yes, thank you for that question. So we have actually entered into litigation over this matter to recoup our funding because, as we've said, after this event happened, we feel that our policy should be covering this loss. So right now it's in the courts and we're waiting for that next step for the insurance company to do their parts in terms of a response. The courts allow a good amount of time for them to do that. And so right now we're just at the mercy of the courts. They've delayed a lot of deadlines for these types of legal activities that aren't urgent or pressing because of COVID. So we anticipate, I believe last I asked our attorney, a court date of next spring if everything stays on track and is not delayed further. And we will update residents once it moves to the next step, and once we either go to court or if something gets settled, we will definitely be communicating that with our residents.
Great. I have a couple questions here about the new hires that you mentioned in your presentation. I'll start with one about the energy and environment specialist that we mentioned. You mentioned, Mayor, that the person would engage with oil and gas, which is clearly an arena that needs explicit attention. Will this person also engage in activities related to other forms of energy as well, those related to conservation, regeneration, etc.?
I'm going to give a short answer, and then I'm going to ask Malcolm to tag on a little bit as well. So the board has generally discussed other obligations for this role. Obviously, our most pressing need right now is oil and gas, but the work in that area is going to taper and change and ebb and flow day to day, week to week, month to month, and over time as more wells get shut down, plug and abandon, right? The workload is going to transition to other areas that are still energy related, but aren't necessarily oil and gas. So I think that knowing that there's more to energy and in the environment than just oil and gas, that's why we named the position as such. And so Malcolm, I don't know if you want to expand maybe a little bit upon your ideas for the non-oil and gas piece for this position.
Mayor Carroll, I think you did that really well. Our intention is first to focus on the regulatory activities of oil and gas wells. As many residents know, there are already 150 active wells in the town of Erie. That will involve a significant amount of oversight, making sure those wells are inspected regularly. The operators are submitting the monitoring reports they're supposed to, that we're engaging effectively with the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission and the Colorado Department of Environment and Public Health, so that they are both fully engaged in the town of Erie and doing their responsible roles in terms of monitoring and regulating the gas activity that's both within the town and adjacent to our borders in Weld County. However, as you mentioned, we do hope to transition to other forms of energy, and whether that's creating a community grade solar farm or working with the developers to have electric only developments, or exploring geothermal or other forms of energy and conservation. I could see, I think this person is going to be busy on oil and gas issues, but I know the board and town staff strongly support doing what we can in other areas to get more renewable forms of energy as well.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming.
Okay, our second question about the hires is related to our DEI director position. Do you have any specific goals related to the work of that position?
I'm going to do this the same as the last one. I'm going to give the high level kind of policy view that the board has set for this, but then I'm going to let Malcolm address more of the administrative detail piece of it, because that's his job, is to manage staff. So the board identified the need for someone to focus exclusively on DE&I last year, and we made it a priority to have a staff person. And like I said, we want this person to work both inwardly with our town and our town staff, and also outwardly with our community to different types of community engagement events and education and outreach, like we started with the community conversation series, but then also to work with all the other organizations in Erie, like the Chamber and the EEDC, to make sure that we're being as inclusive and welcoming as we can. So that's our high level policy goal. And Malcolm, I'll let you talk about more of the detailed specifics for that position.
Sure. We do have a detailed job description for this position, and it's actually a DEI administrator position, not director. But we have asked the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Advisory Board to review the position and give their input on both the detailed duties and responsibilities, as well as the big picture, setting goals and activities that would be accomplished in whether that's 90 days, 6 months, a year, and beyond. And as the mayor pointed out, I think it's both looking internally at the organization and how we do things, whether that's recruiting positions or compensation practices, whether that's how we get contracts in place and do RFPs to make sure that in every way we do things in a way that is promoting equity and inclusion and providing for a diverse workforce. And then also engaging in the community in ways that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout the community and not just in the town's organization.
Thank you, Mr. Fleming.
All right, just doing a time check. We do have about 10 minutes left, so I'll just ask a couple more questions and then we'll pass it back to our great hosts at the chamber here. So can you give me an update on what we might expect to see in the upcoming comprehensive plan update?
Great. And Andrew, I know you're part of this from the Planning Commission, so I don't know if you want to type in what exactly you're looking for there. So we have a small committee of 2 members from the Planning Commission. Andrew's one of them, and then 2 board members. I know it's Mayor Pro Tem Haid and I believe Trustee Harrison that are working together on the high level plan for how do we engage with the community, gather feedback, and then incorporate those changes. And we also budgeted for a consultant to help us with this process. So in terms of timeline, I believe, Gabby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think summer was when we were really going to start our outreach and engagement on that item. Let's see. Oh yeah, just high level what to expect. So I believe we're going to be starting a big chunk of the outreach and engagement this summer. We're going to use a variety of communication methods, whether it's virtual online, whether it's just you can review materials online and submit them, or if we do in-person events, if that's safe. We don't know, right, what in-person events are going to look like this summer, but we're going to find ways to engage with the community on what do you want to see moving forward for the parts of Erie that aren't developed or aren't in that development process. Thank you, Andrew, for that question. And yeah, we will be using our communications department very heavily for this and other areas to make sure that we're getting the word out there on all of these items and that we need your feedback in these areas.
All right, so I think 2 quick last questions for you. One, there's a question if you plan to run for office again in 2022.
I think it's too early to answer that. You guys will find out all at the same time.
We're not breaking news here today.
No news today.
And then the last question that I think is great, as it will transition us right back to our partners at the chamber, is how does the town of Erie support the chamber? And do we send funds to them to help support local businesses?
That's a really great question. So the town, we do have financial support through our budget that we provide to the chamber every year. And I will say the chamber does a lot with the money that we provide them. So there was a time that Erie was putting on some special events and we just didn't have the right people at the time to do that. And the chamber was really good at putting on special events and bringing people into our community from other communities, right? And that's the whole point of these events. A lot of the events that they put on, like the social events, the non-business events, they want both our residents to enjoy the events and the fun that Erie has to offer, but we also want to draw people in from other communities to see how awesome Erie is. And we want them to spend money here. We want them to move here. So there's like the social piece that the chamber does a really good job supporting in our community, and just cohesiveness, right? Bringing people together over multiple different types of events or interests and different age groups. They have different events focused for adults. They have events focused for families. So I really value that piece. And the chamber also does a lot of work with our business community, both supporting businesses that are coming to town and then the ones that do decide to come here. The chamber will work with them to do groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings and just draw more attention to the fact that they're new and they're opening and they're here in Erie. And they'll get residents to come out and get excited and just raise that awareness over businesses. So I think we do support them financially. Ben Pratt, our Economic Development Director, works closely with the chamber as with the Erie Economic Development Council to make sure that we're all working together really cohesively and supporting our businesses, both current and the ones that are coming in the future, to the best we can. So I would say. And we're always open when Ellie and the chamber, Bill, when they have great ideas about things they want to change or do, the town is really responsive to listening to those ideas and working with them on making them happen. So really great partnership that we hope to build on as the years go on.
Fabulous, thank you. And I think we can pass it back then to Mr. Bill Jones if he wanted to wrap us up for the evening.
Thank you all again.
Well, thank you. Just to tag onto that, the partnership that we have with the town has been great over the years, and we really appreciate the opportunity we have to put on the events that help unite our commerce and community. And we really do appreciate the ongoing communication we've had. It's evolved over the years, and I've been around on the chamber a long time, and I think our relationship with town is as strong as ever. So we'd like to thank, of course, Mayor Carroll for her time in answering the questions. We appreciate the other town staff that joined, including Malcolm Fleming, the town administrator, Amber Luttrell, the communications manager, Gabby, who is Gabby Ray, who is the communication director, and tonight she was kind of the wizard behind the curtain making everything work. We appreciate that. I would like to just throw a shout out to Ellie Cabbage, who's our executive director here at the chamber. She has, as we've made adjustments during COVID, she wears an awful lot of hats, and we appreciate her effort in putting these and all the events we have going on right now together. And just to tie in one chamber event with one of the topics tonight. So one of our earliest events this year is a virtual disc golf tournament that we're still working on details, but it will take advantage of the new disc golf course. And so look for information on that coming soon. Again, we appreciate the participation for both the people serving on the panel and the participants in the presentation tonight, for your passion for Erie and your interest in what we can do to make this community even better for all of us to live here. And then we just, as a chamber, we look forward to seeing you at events this summer. We are planning to put on events with modifications to meet the COVID standards, but we look forward to seeing you all out in this community we share.
Bill, can I say one more thing? Thank you. So we've made this slide. So if you guys had any more questions for me based on anything I presented tonight or in general, we wanted to put my contact info up there. But I also put the general Board of Trustees email. So under mine, this bot@erieco.gov, that'll go to every Board of Trustee member. And I always encourage people to email questions to all of us, because that way you can really engage with and communicate with everyone and not just myself. So I also want to thank them. Normally when we do these in person, a lot of them come in person. I know Trustee Gibbs always one that's by my side at all of these in the past. So they're here virtually and they're doing an amazing job. This board is the most dedicated group of people I've seen to supporting the success of our community. So I wanted to end the night as well. I thanked staff, I thanked the chamber, I did not thank our board. We have an amazing board. So I wanted to thank everyone as well. We are a team and we are all doing great working together. So thank you all again.
Everybody have a great night.